Welcome to the Fertility Mind podcast. I am your host, Jessica Friesen, a certified fertility mindset coach, a sound healer, and an international best-selling author. My mission for this podcast is to give you weekly episodes where you hear my own success with IVF and how mindset and manifestation changed it all for me. You will also hear from my guests who share their success stories in the fertility world. I want you to know that you are not alone. Even when things feel tough and when things feel like they aren't going your way, the tools and techniques you will get in this podcast, I know can change everything for you too. So thanks for being here with me today, and let's... Hello and welcome back. Today I have Diane here with me, and she is an absolutely incredibly beautiful soul. And she is going to share with us how she found gratitude during the hardest time in her life and how gratitude saved her while she was grieving through her stillbirth process, and how understanding and developing a gratitude practice has allowed her to turn that pain into a passion where she wants to share her story and help as many people as possible go through the grieving process of stillbirth. So Diane, please take it away and introduce yourself. And thank you again so much for being here.
Sure. My name is Diane, and I am a mom of a 5-year-old little boy who is just the most amazing thing ever. I have my own business called Mallow Bliss, where I do gemstone bracelets. I'm a singer by trade. That's been my whole life, pretty much. Mallow Bliss has just been in the last few years. And yeah, I've had a pretty crazy story over the last 2 years. I don't even know where to start. So before my son, I had a fibroid surgery. So I had 2 fibroids the size of grapefruits. That just kind of came. I had no idea what was happening. So I had that surgery, and that was almost like preventing me from having kids, because she's like, I have to see where the fibroids are. We might have to take your uterus out. So like that was like a really scary, okay, because I always dreamt I would have kids. So luckily it wasn't. They took a little bit of the lining of the uterus, but nothing that would prevent me from having kids. So I was like, awesome. So then we had our son about a year and a bit later, textbook pregnancy. It was, quick, got pregnant quick. Pregnancy was awesome. Didn't even get morning sickness. Like it was just like the best pregnancy ever. I had a C-section with him at 38 weeks because of the fibroid surgery. So if he was too big, if there was any complications, they were worried about my uterus erupting. So he was a C-section. That went perfectly well. Everything was good. And then about, I want to say, I lose track of time. Like since COVID, I have no concept of time at all. I want to say, so it was almost 2 years ago that this all happened. So the year before that, we did get pregnant quickly again. Everything was fine. But I did notice that I felt like she wasn't, so we found out it was a little girl, and I just felt like she wasn't moving as much as she was like the week prior. But then I was like, oh, you're just being like anxious and all the things. So I just went to my doctor anyway. And I was just like, I don't know if it's just me. And she's like, you know what? She's like, we'll just go check. Like, she's like, better safe than sorry. Like, don't stress. So went to the hospital the next day, had an ultrasound appointment. And that's kind of where everything went crazy. So I went to the hospital just thinking I was getting an ultrasound. Everything was fine. And then they send me to like a room they're like, yeah, we need to set you up to the stress test. Like your amniotic fluid is low. And I'm just like, okay. And I was by myself. My husband's at home with our little boy. And I was just like, okay. And so I go sit there, and I'm like, obviously I'm stressing. They're like, oh, don't worry. But I'm obviously like losing my mind. And they're like, oh, like the heartbeat's fine. Everything's fine. a doctor came in like, I want to say like 2 hours later, longest 2 hours of my life. She did like a portable ultrasound. She's like, no, everything looks okay, but we're going to send you to like McMaster Children's Hospital. And I was like, okay. They're like, don't eat anything just in case you have to have her. And I was like, whoa, 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 what? Like, I was only 26 weeks at the time, 27 weeks. And I was like, no, 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 we're not having her. And I'm not having her by myself. Like, my husband's at home. Like, we haven't arranged any like childcare. Like, no. So I cry all the way to McMaster. This was in Cambridge. Because my OBGYN is out in Cambridge.
Okay.
So that was like a 45-minute drive to Hamilton. And I'm just like the whole time I was like, no, 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 no. Bawling my eyes out, get to Mac. They do a stress test. They're like, no, everything's fine. They did their ultrasound. They're like, no, everything's perfectly fine. She's moving around fine. She's just a little small. And I was like, okay. And they're like, that's not anything necessarily to worry about. Because my son was small. He was only 5 pounds, 8 ounces when he was born. So he was small too. So they're like, don't worry about that necessarily. And she's like, we don't want to do birth right now. She's like, she's safer in there than out here. And I had an appointment the following Thursday for an ultrasound to see the fluid levels. And then the following Thursday, they were going to see if she's grown. So I was like, okay, so everything's fine. So I'm just like, okay, like calm down, everything's fine. Um, and then fast forward to that appointment, the night as I was going to bed, I was like, I don't know if she's like moving. But then again, I was like, no, it's just me. Like, of course she's moving. I'm just being paranoid. And I had to put like my appointment, that ultrasound was like 7 in the morning. And this was at like 2 in the morning. So I'm like, oh, I got to get up soon anyway. And I'm like, I know it's probably just me. So I go, super early. The hospital is like empty. So I go to Mac again. They do the ultrasound. She's like, yeah, we're just going to send you for another stress test. And I was like, I'm like, this again, and thinking, whatever. So I go upstairs to labor and delivery, go sit in the room. And the doctor that I had seen the week before, she comes in and she's like, she like sat down. I knew something was wrong. I could just see it on her face. Like it wasn't, she looked nervous to like tell me. And she's just like, I'm so sorry, but your baby has passed. And I was just like, okay. Because I think I was just like in shock. She's like, no, that's not okay. I was like, I don't know what to say. Like I just sat there. I was like, I need to go outside. And she's like, okay, but come back. Or no, no, I went outside. I didn't say anything. She's like, I'll give you a minute and to call your husband. So I just left. I'm like, I cannot stay here. Like on a labor and delivery floor, I'm like, I need to get out of here. So I went outside, called my husband, and I couldn't even speak. Like I tried like 3 times and I couldn't even speak. And he's like, what are you trying to say? And I'm like, like it was the weirdest moment of my life. I like could not talk. I could not say the words that like our daughter was not here. And so I finally got words out that he could piece together. And he's just like, what? And I'm like, I don't even know. Then the doctor called me. She's like, can you come back? And I said, honestly, I said, I have to go home. I said, is there any danger to me by not coming back? She goes, not right this second. No. And I was like, okay, then I need to go home. Like I need to be with my husband and my son and just figure out what is happening. So I go home, I have a moment with my husband and son. And luckily, my son was young enough. He had no idea what was going on, which is one thing I am so grateful for that I didn't have to come home and explain. We talk about her to him, but I don't think he fully gets it. And I keep it obviously kid appropriate. I'm not like, trying to explain life to him. But yeah, and then she called me. She's like, hey, come back down. We have to figure out a birthing plan. And I was just like, I'm like, a birthing plan. Okay. So many things came up and that's why when you asked me to do this, I was like, yes, because so many things came up that I was like, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that. And one of them was birthing. Like, obviously, I knew she wasn't going to stay, but like to talk about a birthing plan
Yeah.
when you're not leaving with a baby was the most wild thing I've ever like discussed with somebody. So I went back, obviously, because I knew I had to. And she's like, yeah, we're going to do vaginal. And I was just like, are you sure? Like that freaked me out because I was always told no vaginal births. And, they were like, no, she's really small. And we'll have C-section on standby, but she's really small. So we don't think there's any issue. And I was like, okay. So they're like, we'll call you tomorrow. They're like, do you want to do it now? And I was like, well, no, like my husband's at home. I don't have childcare yet. Like I'm processing what you just told me like 3 hours ago. Like, no. And I said, and then again, I said, can I go into labor? She's like, technically, yeah. She's like, just watch for the signs. And then that sent me into a whole other like anxiety because I was like, I want to go home, but like, what if I give birth? Like, it was just like a whole mind thing.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, okay, we'll call you first thing in the morning. I was like, okay, perfect, great. So go home and just tell everybody. That was crazy. And like, I kind of put that on my husband, God bless him. I was like, I can't. I was like, I'm just going to text my family and hope that they understand why it's a text because I can't say it. So he called his family. He was able to talk about it. I just could not say it. Even the text, I wrote the text once and copied and pasted it because I'm like, I can't keep writing this. Like it was just like, I'm like, I can't do that. So the text was basically like, sorry to text you this, but I can't say it. And it's just funny how like us as humans even do that. Like I'm apologizing to somebody for sending them a text message after losing a child. Like that's crazy. But
Yeah.
I just said, we lost her and I have to give birth and let you know how it goes kind of thing. And everyone was just like, wait, what? And it was it was a crazy day. One that won't ever forget, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then we just arranged childcare. My sister came the next day and it was a waiting game. I was waiting. I called the hospital a few times because I was told I'd be called first thing in the morning. So I got up, had a shower, and just got myself ready. And I called a couple times and they're like, we don't have any rooms. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens if I go into labor? They're like, well, come down. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, it's so interesting. I know that's their job, but it's very interesting how just textbook it is for them. Like, oh, if you're a good labor, just come down and just so calmly. And I'm like freaking out. So they finally called around like 3 or 4 and said, come in for 7:30. So I was like, okay. So then it was the next step of the realness of what was, happening. And so my sister's here, we go down and get into like a birthing suite. And that's when I like lost my mind. And the one nurse comes in and just kind of told me the process and hooked me up to an IV, like just got the stuff in my hand. And she's like, do you want to go for a walk? And I was like, yeah, actually, I would like to go for a walk. So me and my husband just walked around the hospital for 10, 15 minutes, just kind of like, having that moment with each other and go back into the room. And then all of a sudden, like an OBGYN and 3 nurses walk in. And I just broke down because it was just too much. It was just like all these people like walking at me and I just lost it. And they're like, sorry, sorry. And then they all like ran out except the OBGYN. He's like, just go, just go. And I was just like, sorry. I'm like, that was just a lot. There was a lot of you. And it just like everything hit me at that moment. So yeah. And then the process of birth, which was very unenjoyable. It ended up taking 2 days. 2 days I was in the hospital.
Wow.
And normally if I was leaving with a baby, that'd be no big deal. But like, I was just like, hey, come on. Like, so they did what are those things called? A Foley? Is that, I
Yeah.
think that's called. So they put a Foley in because they're like, you're only 1 centimeter dilated. So put the Foley in and they're like, when we can pull this out, we'll break your water and we'll go. I'm like, okay. So I'm just sitting there, sitting there. They have me hooked up to watch the contractions because they're like, we can't have you having like too big of contractions. with everything. So I was like, okay, couldn't eat because the C-section option was still on the table. So I don't have a baby. I can't eat. like I'm like, this is insane. Like I was just like, what is this life right now? And yeah, it was just a waiting game. So they did the like to induce labor, but it was a different kind. It was a lesser dosage. They're like, we can't give you the regular kind because your uterus will most likely erupt. So
Wow.
they gave me like a low dose that goes up. I can't remember. It's actually a different kind. I can't remember what it's called, but every half hour they'd up the dose a little bit, up the dose a little bit until they got to the full dose. And then at the full dose, nothing. I was having contractions, but nothing was happening. So I'm getting frustrated because I want to go home. I just want to go home. I want this to be over. I want to go home. I want to go see my son. I just want to get out of here. And we hadn't seen an OBGYN in a while. So we were just getting frustrated at this point. And our nurse that we had the first night, her name was Rachel. And she was like, I got home because we ended up having her the next night when we gave birth as well. And we got home and I said to my husband, I'm like, she was real, right? Like I really thought I was like in some like hallucinating, like weird, like angel thing. Cause this woman, I don't know where she came from, but she she saved me that day. Like she had us smiling and she had me so calm. And I can't even explain it. It was the strangest like experience, but like in the best way possible, but like to the point where I asked my husband, like she was there, right? Like you saw her, and he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, just checking, because like it was crazy. So finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I need an epidural. Like I was in so much pain. I'm like, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I need epidural, like I can't anymore. So they did that. And then so that was all good until I had to go to the bathroom. So they just did the thing where they like stick something in your bladder and drain it. It wasn't like a catheter. It was just, I don't know, it's like a portable one, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. So as soon as they did that, my whole right side of my body became like unnumb. Is that a word? I don't know. But I could feel everything on the right side of my body.
Oh
And they're
no.
like, oh, that's weird. And I was like, yeah. I was like, you know what though? I said, it's better than it was. I said, my left side's still good. Like, so they tried to move it around. They tried to increase the dose and nothing was working. So the right side of my body, I could feel everything. Left side was numb. So I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's like half the pain. I'm good. I have a pretty high pain tolerance. So I was like, it's still better than before. Don't worry about it, whatever. So then they switched nurses and had the day shift come in and then the night shift. So now we finally talked to an OBGYN and they're just like, hey, we're going to do one more round of the inducing thing. So they took me off of it for 2 hours because apparently it only takes 2 hours to clear your system. So they took it off for 2 hours and then put me back on. They're like, if this round doesn't work, then we'll do a C-section. So I was like, okay. So at least we had a plan. So I was feeling okay. Then we had to call my cousin because my sister has kids and she couldn't stay 2 nights. So now we're trying to find childcare for the next night, not thinking I would be in there 2 nights. So finally, the nurse comes in again, like the nighttime nurse, and it's Rachel again. So that was such a calming, because I knew we were close. I could just feel that we were close to doing this, and to have her back was just like, and I even asked, I was like, who's on tonight? They're like, Rachel. And I was like, thank God, like that is just like the person I needed there.
Yeah.
So she comes in, we finally eventually the Foley pulls out. And then that was a whole other thing of emotions. Like I was happy, but then I was like, oh crap. Like now it's coming. Like I kind of got comfortable and was in my own world with just like laying there and not having to deal with it directly, right? So Foley comes out, they bring in an OBGYN, they break my water, and that's when everything got real, because I was like, okay, well, what am I looking for? Because I didn't birth my son traditionally. So I don't know what going into labor feels like. I have no idea. And she's like, well, basically you'll feel like you have to poop. And I'm like, okay. So I said, I looked at her, I'm like, I feel like I have to poop. She's like, seriously? And I was like, yeah. So she runs out because the OBGYN was like, oh, it'll be probably another like 2 or 3 hours. So just relax. And I was like, okay. So then when I talked to the nurse, I was like, no, I feel like I have to poop. So she runs out the door because at that hospital, those OBGYNs, like once they're gone, sometimes it's hard to get them back because there's so much going on at that hospital. So luckily the one was still there and she comes running in, another person comes running in, like, hey, push, push, push. And I was like, okay, this is like so many emotions because like when you're giving birth, that's emotional.
Yeah.
But to know that like nothing's coming with me was like, so pushed like I think like three or four pushes and she was out. And then that was weird because it was silence, just like silence. And that was probably, I don't think I've cried telling the story in so long. Oh my goodness. That was probably the hardest part where I was just like, there's no noise like that. That was a lot. So they wrapped her up and took her out because I was like, I want to hold her. My husband didn't. He's like, I don't think I can handle that. I said, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. Like, you do what you need to do. I said, at the time, I didn't want to hold her, but I knew that if I didn't, I would be so mad at myself later. Cause in the emotions, I was just like, no, no, I can't. But I was like, no, I have to. So I was like, just, can you just take her out and let him and me have a moment, and then when I'm ready, he'll leave and bring her back, kind of thing. So they're like, yep, no problem. So they took her out, and it was just kind of like it was just like such like a energy just release, and it was just, and the first thing my husband's like, do you want food? And I'm like, yes. Like I had physically and mentally been through so much in those 2 days and not eating, and I was just like, please get me food. I'm like, I like didn't know what to do with myself. So I ate and I fell asleep for the first time in 2 days. And then about 4 in the morning, the nurse Rachel came back in and she's like, I hate to do this. She's like, but we need this room. And that was probably the only bad thing I would say about my whole experience is being kicked out of a room when I like 4 hours ago, just, I was leaving. This was at like midnight. So I was leaving in the morning anyway. So like for me, I don't know how hospitals work. So I'm, not speaking as someone who knows what goes on, but I was just like, you couldn't just leave me there for like a few more hours because I was going home anyway. So that was the only part that was like, so I was like, okay, like bring her in. My husband went out into the waiting room and I just sat there with her, and the nurse Rachel like held my hand and she was bawling, and it was just such a real raw moment with somebody in healthcare. She wasn't trying to play cool, and she wasn't just sitting there, like she was crying just as much as I was. We bonded over those 2 days. And so yeah, like, and then just so many things came up after that. I just, left the hospital with a box in my hand. And I was just like, what is this? You see it's a kids hospital, so there's kids everywhere. And one thing I am thankful for, I never heard a baby cry. So I'm so thankful for that because that would have been, I don't know if I would have handled that, but just walking out of the hospital with a box and I'm just like, okay, like what is happening with this? So yeah, and they're just like, what are you gonna name her? And I'm like, name her? I was like, she wasn't supposed to be here for another like 10 weeks. I don't know. So, and something I learned that I didn't know, if you leave the hospital with no name, that's what goes on their birth certificate.
Wow.
So you can't change it after. You have to tell them. I mean, I'm sure you can change it after, like with the government, but the
Yeah.
hospital can't change it. So she just was just Baby Ryder because that's my maiden name. I still haven't switched like to my married name after like 12 years. But so it just says Baby Ryder on her thing. And so we got home and they called, like a social worker called and she's like, how are you? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. Good, I guess. Like, I don't know. And they're like, okay, well, here's some funeral home things. And I was just like, I was like, funeral home things. I was like, what? Didn't think about that. Didn't even think about that. Not that I thought I was just walking away and leaving my baby at the hospital, but for whatever reason, I wasn't thinking about that. So I was like, oh, cool. I have to call funeral homes. Okay, great. So we had a connection with a sister-in-law of mine, and they wanted like $1,400 for a cremation. That's it. No ceremony, no nothing. And I was just like, what? I was like, no, like the social worker told me a couple $100. Like they're like they waive everything when it's a baby. And I was like, okay. Not that it mattered. I would have paid 5,000 if that's what it costed, but I was just like going by what the social worker said. I'm like, I don't think that's right. So I called the social worker back and she's like, no, she's like, that's so wrong. And like she was visibly upset that a funeral home was going to charge us that kind of money. So
Mhm.
she's like, no, she's like, I'm going to call some for you. She's like, just go be, I will touch base with you. So we found one, and we're in the Hamilton area. So we found one in Hamilton and it was like two something. So I was like, okay, like again, would have paid 5,000 if that's what it was. But it was disappointing to hear of a funeral home trying to scam,
Yeah.
grieving families. Like that was really didn't sit right with me. But so then the next step of going to the funeral home and filling out papers and picking an urn, and like it was just the most bizarre experience of my life. And I don't wish it upon anybody. Like, and not even an enemy, like not that I have any, but I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. And yeah, so there was just a lot of things. And then about 2 days later, my boobs were so sore and just
Oh,
triple the size. And I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this now. Okay. So I don't have a baby. I just went to a funeral home and now my boobs are ready to feed a baby. I was like, cool. So it just like a lot of that kind of stuff popped up where it's just like no one told me that that was gonna happen. So I'm just like like for 2 weeks, I couldn't, like everyone was coming over and hugging. I'm like, I can't hug you, like the side hug, and I couldn't even release it. So, when you have kids, obviously the breastfeeding, your boobs are so tender and but at least you have a child to help, release it. And I didn't want to pump because I was like, then it's just going to keep making more because it thinks it's a baby. So I'm like, I just got to wait this out. And it was about 2 weeks before they like chilled out, and like that was crazy because I was like, my body is, then you start getting mad. You're like, how does my body not know that like there's no baby? And you just start getting angry. Like there's definitely stages of grieving, and I definitely went through them. um and it was just like it was one of those things, like everybody like tiptoes around you, and I hated that. I'm like, don't just treat me how you treat me, like just be there for me, like don't tiptoe, like don't do that, and I know everyone means well, but it was just one of those things where I was like, just be normal, please be normal. And and it was the craziest thing I've been through in my life. And it's funny because gratitude, this is going to sound crazy to people who don't know this world, but gratitude 100% saved my life mentally, like saved my life. I don't know what version of me would be here right now if I didn't have that. And like I mentioned before, Kathleen Cameron, I had seen her once. Like somebody sent one of her workshops to me. I was like, oh, I love her. Her energy is wicked, like cool. And I didn't see her again for probably like a year. She wasn't popping up anywhere. And then about a week after I got home, she was constantly popping up on Facebook, popping up on Instagram. And I was like, that is so weird. And I just dove into her things, and actually reached out to her. And I was like, I need help. Like, I don't know where to put this. Like, how do you stay in a frequency of like gratitude and abundance and high vibes when your world was just completely shattered? And she was so kind. And she actually sent me voice messages back. And this is what you do. This is what you focus on. Like, you got this. And, it was hard. It's not something that was easy. And it's not to say you can't grieve. Like you can be in both. And that's what I wasn't understanding. I'm like, how can I be grieving but be grateful at the same time? Like it wasn't clicking. And then when it clicked, I was like, okay, we got this. Like, and it was just every day, whether it was just like, I got up today. That's what I was grateful for that day. Something made me laugh today. Like they didn't have to be major things. I was just so grateful when I smiled, because for about 2 weeks I didn't smile. Like I couldn't find, you know, obviously my son was a huge factor in being okay, but it took a couple weeks before I could be like, okay. And everyone's like, oh, it happens for a reason. I was like, no, no,
Mm.
because I hate that saying. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, it doesn't happen for a reason. I'm like, tell me the reason. You know what I mean? Like, I know, again, I know everyone's just trying to like say the right thing or be comforting, but I'm like, tell me the reason that I don't have my baby. Like, there's no reason in terms of that, right? So I'm just like, no, I'm going to be grateful that, she chose me, because there's women who couldn't handle what I went through, and maybe they wouldn't be here. Maybe they, you know, it's just one of those things where I started looking at it like, this little girl came when I needed her the most. And yes, would I give anything to have her here? Absolutely. Like that's definitely not the outcome I wanted, but her purpose was to change my life, and she did. I am not the same person I was a year ago. And like I said, like I want to spread this message because I felt so alone. Like me and my husband felt so alone. We had our family here, everybody was supportive, but just we didn't know anybody that had been through this. This wasn't even a thought on my like radar that something like this would happen. And especially having like a perfect pregnancy with my first, I wasn't thinking anything like this. Um, and then too, just like with my husband, like the fathers get so left behind in these things because everyone's just focused on the mom, and being there, trying to be there for him while I'm grieving myself. And guys don't like to talk. They're not huge talkers as a rule. So I'd always be like, are you good? Like you're not talking. And he's like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm like, okay. So I really want to bring awareness that like you're not alone. Like this happens so much, and it's so sad to say that, but it does.
Yeah.
And I even asked them, I was like, how often do you see this? And the doctor's like, honestly, she's like, every day. And I was just like,
Wow.
I was like, God bless you, like for doing this job, because I couldn't. And me and my husband sat there one day, like trying to think of a name, because I'm like, we're gonna name her. I don't care what the paper says, we're gonna name her, right? And he looked at me, he's like, what about Rachel? For the nurse. And I was like, yep, that's the one. Because I had no names, not even one, because we were still 10 weeks out. So, with my son, we named him, well, we had an idea of a name for him like the day before we went in for the C-section. So like I wasn't there yet. Like I had a couple I liked, but we weren't there yet. And I was just like, yes. I'm like, that is, because I swear, like I know it sounds dramatic, but like I swear this chick was an angel. Like like she was just the energy and the connection and the just she was the most amazing person in healthcare I've ever met in my life. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it was Rachel Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is my middle name. So we put the nurse's name, my middle name, and then my husband's last name, obviously. So I called the social worker and I was like, look, I was like, we named our daughter after our nurse, Rachel. Can you see if she would meet with us so I could tell her? I was like, it's not something I just want someone to pass on to her or write in an email. So she's like, yeah, I'll reach out to her for sure. And I was so nervous because I was like, I want to tell her, but like, what if she doesn't want to see us again? Because everybody heals and deals with their job differently. Like maybe she doesn't want to reconnect with a patient that, this was about a month later, I think. And, so the social worker wrote back. She's like, yep. She said, no problem. Here's her schedule for the next week. So I was like, okay. So we wrote her like I wrote her this like super long card that just said like, please know the difference that you're making in people's lives. Like I said, my experience would not have been what it was if you weren't there. And I said, please don't ever stop doing what you're doing as long as like your mental health is okay. Like, please don't ever stop. Um, and I just like gave her a bracelet from that I made for her, and we just got her like a Starbucks gift card. There's nothing I could do that would ever thank her for what she did, but it was just a little something to be like, you're appreciated, you know? So we went and gave her that. And then I had to get my husband to tell her because I already started crying. I'm like, I can't say it. So Jeff told her, and she got to meet our son because she was asking, and we were showing pictures and whatnot. So she got to meet him. And then we told her, like, yeah, we named her Rachel. And she's just like, oh my God. And I said, I just want you to know how much like you mean to our family. And she starts crying. Everyone's crying. I'm like, hey, let's go. We gotta go. So it was so nice to see her again. But then that was another section of healing. Because here's somebody that I had, a stranger that I had the most intimate connection with in our family, and she's just gone.
Yeah.
Like that was a whole other grieving process that I can't just call her and be like, hey, you want to hang out, you know? But like to connect with someone the way that we connected, and the things that she did for us, and to just not have her in our life because I don't want to be a weirdo and like stalk a nurse. But you know, like that was a healing thing because I was like, oh, she's just gone now. So there's just so many things that came up for us that we were like, wait, what, you know? And like you were saying before, like the leave like for work, like that should absolutely be a thing,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just like to say like, oh, you lost a child, oh okay, well, you got to come to work. Like that is so weird to me.
Mhm.
And so we did an autopsy because I I mean, you want to know what happened. I was just like, I don't understand. Like I was there a week before and they're telling me everything's fine and
Yeah.
we'll just monitor, make sure she's growing. And if she's not growing, then we'll go in and get her out and try and help her and whatever. So like the week before everything's fine and then the week later like she's gone. So I'm like, I need to know what the hell like happened. So that was a whole other thing. It took a year, a year,
Wow.
a year of me. I wouldn't say for the full year, but you know, as a mom, you blame yourself for everything.
Yep.
So I'm going home. What did I eat? What didn't I notice? What did I do? What didn't I do? How did I not see this coming? How did I not know? Like you go through that, you know, and because you're the carrier. So you're just like, what did I do? What did I do? And for a few months, I was like, what did I do? And that's a lot to take on because deep down, I know I didn't do anything, you know,
Mhm.
but your mind's like, no, I think you did, you know, and you start to second guess, like, oh, what did I do? Did I, like, my biggest thing was, did I eat something? Did I eat something that I'm not supposed to eat? And like, you know, and I kept calling and kept calling. I'm like, hi, like, what? Like, after 6 months, I was like, what is going on? Like, they told me 6 to 8 months. And even that I think is insane. But they said 6 to 8 months. So 6 months go by. They're like, yeah, I don't have anything yet. Sorry. 8 months go by. No. And like the department, I can't remember what they're called. The department that does that, they're not answering us. They're not replying to emails. And I'm just like, oh my God, like there's a family on the other end of this. And not only that, I didn't want to get pregnant again until I knew what it was. Because what if it was something that would just happen again? You
Yeah.
know, I'll just be grateful for, you know, one good pregnancy and I'm good. Like I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So a year goes by. It was like 2 days after the anniversary of her death or her birthday, I guess. And I call and I'm like, and now I'm getting like a little agitated, you know. So many times they're like, you're so kind. Thank you for being kind. I was like, well, yelling at you is not gonna get me the results. I said, I'm frustrated. I said, I won't lie, I'm frustrated. And so then the nurse and doctor's office that, like the doctor that helped me, she's like, call the customer or patient care line or something. She's like, they're really good at getting things done. So I called them, explained my story, and they were just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, it should not take a year. Let me go find out what's going on. And I'm saying, like, the departments won't answer the nurses. There's no communication. Like, what's going on? So they end up taking that to the head of that department, like the girl at the very, very top of the, line. And she calls me. She's like, I am so sorry. She's like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know why there's no communication. She's like, it should not take a year. I'm on it. I'm like, okay. So she calls me back. She goes, I have the results. She's like, I can't give them to you. She's like, because I'm not a doctor. So she's like, in that sense, to explain things to you, she's like, I wouldn't be able to answer you. Like, she's like, I can read it. She's like, but I wouldn't be able to answer any questions that you have because I'm not that kind of doctor. She's like, so I will get them to your doctor. She will call you probably tomorrow. And then she's like, because of this, we're going to put some systems in place where after a certain amount of time, something's going to be triggered where it's like, hey, this family hasn't gotten results yet. What's going on? She's like, I'll talk to them about communicating. There has to be some communication. I don't know what happened there. So, a part of me, again, I was happy because I was strong enough to deal with waiting that long. It wasn't ideal, but I was strong enough to do it. And, some things are now being implemented that won't let that happen again. So that was really comforting. And then to go through the results, like that was a trip, just going through each thing. She's like, yeah, she measured this, her ears were okay, her fingers were good, this was good. And I'm just like starting to cry because she's like going through each body part of my child that I don't have. And I'm like, this is harder than I thought, because I just thought it would be like, oh, this is what happened. But like she's going through everything, like skull, eyes, arms. And I'm just like, okay, like, can you just tell me what wasn't good, but that was hard to hear because everything was good. The only thing that they saw but wouldn't even say that was the reason is a small like a thin small vessel in my umbilical cord. So she's like, it could have been a blood clot, it could have been, she's like, but it's not definite, so they won't put that as a reason.
Yeah.
So basically I was left with nothing. So it was like this big, like, okay, we're gonna get an answer to, could be this, might be not, have a good day. And it was just like, oh, okay. So I mean, the good part of that was I was clear to get pregnant. There was nothing that they saw. They just said they would put me on aspirin because of the small, tube thing, whatever. I don't know the medical terms, so I'm using terms for those who aren't doctors. They just said, we'll put you on aspirin to keep the blood thin in case that's what it was. But they're like, we know you can carry to term, so there's nothing that we see. And like something kept popping up about like a heart-shaped uterus that I had never heard with my son, but the OBGYN that did my fibroid surgery was like, yeah, it was heart-shaped. And I was like, huh, but no one said anything. But this pregnancy, like everybody kept commenting on it. So I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. Like it's been a year. Like let's try. So I got pregnant at the end of August, and it was so emotional. It was so emotional. It was one of those, like, I was so happy, but then it brought me back to, not having my daughter, because if we had her here, I wouldn't be pregnant because two is cool for us, only ever wanted two if I was able. And, so I got pregnant, and then I was just like, okay, like we got this, like it's good. Like I was just trying to be happy, and I was happy. I was so happy. And then about 2 days after I took the test, I started bleeding. So I was like, okay, here we go. And I had bled with with my second pregnancy, so not necessarily anything to worry about, because my bleeding with her had nothing to do with anything. So, and I hear spotting is normal all the time, but I'm like, I was like, I don't know, this is pretty heavy for spotting. Like it doesn't seem like spotting. So my doctor's like, just wait it out. She's like, when it stops, take a pregnancy test and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay. So I took a pregnancy test when it stopped, and it was negative. So I had a miscarriage. So it was just kind of like, okay, but that seems so little compared to what we went through. So it was almost like I was like, okay. And my husband's like, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, "We've been through so much worse. Like I'm fine." Like obviously I had a moment where I cried because it's not what I wanted, but it was just like, okay, it's fine. We got this. So I went for another ultrasound to make sure that everything was clear and I didn't need to go to the hospital for anything and everything was good. And then the doctor said something about a T-shaped uterus. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, what is this? So I was supposed to go back because he wanted to do the ultrasound himself to look like live, not look at pictures. So he's like, because it could be a shadow, whatever. So I was like, a T shaped. I'm like, I thought it was a heart shape. I'm like, heart and T are not the same shape.
Yeah.
So the Saturday I was supposed to, I had my period and I got a cold. And they had this like big sign on their office the last time I was there, like, if you're sick, like, don't come in. So I called them. I was like, I have a cold. They're like, okay, well, the doctor's going away for a month for a conference. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm just waiting. I was actually going to call them today to reschedule because I think he should be back. Just, I didn't want to get pregnant again until he took a look at the ultrasound because apparently this guy is like the guy for women's health and uterus and all women things related. So I kind of want him to just take a look because I'm just wondering if that has something to do with anything, right? Like there's so many questions still.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to wait and see and then, keep trying, I guess. It's one of those things, I know I see us as a two kid family. Like I just do.
Yeah.
And well, two earthside kids, I should say. Um, but it's been a journey and honestly, people say like I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. And honestly, it's gratitude. It's being thankful for so many other things that are here and just putting into perspective, like I said, like our daughter chose me because I needed it and I could handle it, and like I said, I want to tell this story over and over and over again. I want people to know that it's so normal. It's so sad, but it's so normal and you're not alone. And there's so many women that can help and, just be there with you. And,
Yeah.
so that's my story with it. I say I'm thankful she chose me. I'm thankful that I got to spend that time with her. And, even holding her, it was so surreal and just a crazy moment. And I was like, I know, like, you picked me for a reason. So I will make sure that I do something with this. And that's what I've been trying to do now that I can talk about it. Like for a while, I couldn't speak without like sobbing. So it was just like, no point on talking about this because you can't even understand what I'm saying. Um, but now I can talk about it with, still tears, but I can talk through them. So I just put it into that. Like I wouldn't want her to have passed through anybody else. Like I am thankful she chose me. I'm grateful. And, she saved me. I needed that. I needed her to do that for me.
Hmm.
And, so many things have changed and I've met so many amazing people and you, like, and Kathleen and becoming part of that group. Like, it's just, it's crazy what spirals and, what comes from things if you have an open mind and if you let it, and so that's my mission right now is to just spread the word and help as many women as I can and teach gratitude, like, because I know it sounds so simple, but it is, we attract what we, think about and what we are and what we see. And gratitude has literally, and Kathleen and this whole community has literally, mentally saved my life. Because I really don't know if I didn't have that, if I didn't know how to, have gratitude and have the, manifesting mind and the just that knowledge and awareness, I guess it'd be awareness.
Yeah.
I don't know what version would be here right now. It'd probably be a not good one. There's alcoholism in my family. I rarely drink. It's just not my thing. But I think about that, like if I let it consume me, would I be an alcoholic mother to my kid? Would I be a terrible wife? Would I be terrible to myself? Like just the you know, alcohol in my body, like hurting me. And, so I'm just very grateful that I have the mindset and the, awareness to not do that. Yeah. So basically I just, I'm very thankful that I have this community and the mindset that I do to not fall into, a deep depression, drinking, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I definitely am on the other side of it in terms of like I just want to share, and help as many people and men too. Like I said earlier, the guys get forgotten in this. It's all about moms. But they're there too. There's obviously certain aspects my husband can't feel that I feel, like the actual physical part, the bonding with our daughter for 7 months prior. Like there's things they don't know, but they still lost the child. They still go through that part of it. So yeah, I just want to share my story as much as I can now. I'm ready, and just share how I deal with it daily. And it's not something that goes away. It's not like, oh, I'm healed. I still have days where I cry sometimes, and then that's okay. You just carry on and, you know, go into that gratitude and just think of anything. And I think people overcomplicate gratitude and think it has to be like some big, well, I don't have anything to be thankful for because nothing big happened. But like I said, it could be the sun's out today. I smiled today. I had a moment with myself and just had a coffee. Like they don't have to be massive, like, big, huge things. It's just little things, and it spirals. And I just hope to share that with everybody because it's honestly, again, I can't stress it enough. It saved my life, like 100%.
Cool.
It's a
Um,
story. It's a
it
story.
is. And Diane, I honestly want to commend you for your bravery because obviously it is the unimaginable. And for you to be able to share and, I felt your heart through the whole conversation. I even had tears for anyone because you won't see the video of this. Um,
There were tears had.
but like I like for someone that has not experienced that, I could feel you through this whole conversation. And I want to just say thank you so much for sharing your story. And I really do believe that when we go through some of the unimaginable things, the growth that you have is something to also like commend, that you have the awareness to know that your daughter came to you for a reason. You have the awareness to know you persisted through a year of waiting. And now there's systems that are going to be in place, which for me, from someone in the outside, I think like that is something to be grateful for. Like, no, you shouldn't have had to experience that. Um, but something at least better can come from a situation so no one else has to experience that. And I love that you want to share your story. Like, I think that is so important for someone on the opposite side of the spectrum of teaching women about mindset and their fertility because they can't conceive naturally and they're frustrated or they've gone through lots of other emotional impacts as well. Our mindset and gratitude really does change so much.
Oh,
And
totally.
the fact that you want to share your story is just that touches my heart because, I deal with people all the time that feel like they are so alone. And this is a very opposite end of the spectrum of where absolutely you feel alone. And for you to even say, like, a doctor said, like, this happens daily, like, that's shocking.
It
And
is.
it does need to be known. And I know at the beginning of the conversation before I hit record, like we were talking about statistics of miscarriage. It's 1 in 4. That is not talked about. Infertility is like 1 in 8. Preemies is 1 in 8. Um, all different things that are just not talked about or too taboo. Um, But I guess the one question that I have for you, so anyone that's listening, what specifically in gratitude or what advice would you tell someone to start with gratitude and how it ultimately saved you?
So I just started, honestly, every morning when I got up, I just sat with myself for a second and I didn't put too much pressure, because there's different ways to do gratitude, right? There's just saying I'm thankful for this, and then there's really feeling it, and then there's all different levels. But I just started out simple because some days were hard to get up. you know, I I just started so simple. I sometimes I would just do it in bed before I woke up. I didn't write it down at first. It was just sat with myself and I'm like, what am I grateful for today? And if the sun was out, I was just like, it's sunny. I woke up today. I have my family. I have friends. I have, like the littlest things. It didn't have to be anything major. And then at night before I went to bed, I was just like, I smiled today. Somebody made me smile today. There's hope that I will find happiness again. I smiled. The sun was out today. I had a coffee because for a little while I couldn't eat or drink. I was just like so sick about what happened, and I ate today. I had a visitor today. Like it really doesn't have to be complicated. Find one little thing. And I know sometimes it's easy to be like, well, I'm not grateful for anything. Like, look what happened. I'm not grateful for anything. But there's always something. And, maybe you're grateful you had a safe delivery, because that was something that went through my mind. What if something happens to me during this, and yeah, just start small. If you have other kids, like I'm thankful that I am a mom, that I do get to experience. Because some women experience this and come home to nothing. Come home to an empty house with a nursery maid. Because I was almost 30 weeks when this happened. And it's weird because I always had a weird feeling about that pregnancy. Never would have pegged it for what happened, but I couldn't get into that pregnancy. It was such a bizarre feeling. But yeah, I just think you find anything. Like my favorite show was on TV today. Like it really doesn't have to be complicated at first because it is going to be hard. It is going to be hard to say you're grateful for something when your world just shattered. So just keep it so simple to start and just pick three things in the morning and three things at night and build upon it because they'll start to show up more. And I know, like for me, I'm just lucky that I had that because I know if somebody told me that, I probably would have been like, go away.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, no, nothing makes me happy right now. Like, are you insane? So that's why I'm also thankful that I went through this because I can, tell people like, honestly, I know it sounds crazy, but I've been through it. You can find things to be grateful for in the beginning. I promise you can. And even if it's like my warm blanket, like it doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple. Just find three things in the morning, three things at night, and it'll grow from there. You will see it grow for sure.
And I also really love that you talked about the duality, that you can still find gratitude while you're grieving. And
That
I,
was the hardest part. That was hard
yeah.
because we're always taught like, no, if you're grieving and you're upset, that's what you are. But
Mhm.
but it's not,
Yeah.
and Kathleen recommended a book to me, Happier Than God.
Yep. I love that one.
That changed everything.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to go get that book, who's dealing with anything like this, like that book explained to me how I can grieve and be happy at the same time. That was the book that I was like, oh, okay, I can still be grateful for this life and be at my core, you know, abundant in and not just abundant in money, but just abundant in life and be thankful and smile while still grieving. And that was the book that made that make sense. So if you are struggling and going through what I went through, that book it helped so much, so much.
Yeah. Honestly, like just yeah, I feel like I'm at a loss for words because like I'm so proud of you for sharing this. And it needs to be shared. I don't like that fertility or pregnancy after loss or stillbirth is taboo or why dare you talk about it. And also before we pressed record, we were talking about a bereavement leave. I feel so passionately whether it is a miscarriage, a stillbirth, you as the caring person, even the husband or even your partner, depending on your family dynamic, you were excited about this. You felt love, you felt gratitude that you get to be at this stage in your life and then it's gone. And you know what, the fact that you were so strong, like you still showed up for your son every single day through, I get choked up saying like the unimaginable, like, and I like it just, women are incredibly strong people. And we do not get the credit for how strong we are and the things that we persist through and still have to show up even when you just want to stay in bed all day and scream and cry and say, why the did this happen to me? Um, so yeah, I can't say it more than enough of just like, thank you for sharing this. And my heart absolutely goes to you. And I honestly, for anyone that's listening, it is okay to have duality. You know, in no way, shape, or form can I compare any part of my story or journey to Diane's. But I have, gratitude in so many ways took me out of deep, dark holes that were happening in my life. And I couldn't understand why things were happening the way they were, but I could still be grateful for certain things in my life. And that just tipped the scales enough to make the day better versus being in the environment where a lot of undesirable situations are going on where you feel like you don't necessarily have control. And when Diane talks about Kathleen, she is an absolute beautiful powerhouse of a woman, but she talks about your awareness. And as myself, as a fertility mindset coach, I teach mindset to people and how so much of you, like the power you hold within you, can help. And gratitude is such an amazing tool. And it's such a tipping point for so many aspects. And the fact that, you know, I know people that have given up on their journey, um, that have not gone through what you went through. And the fact that you still want to have another baby is incredible. And the fact that you can dive into gratitude when I don't know if it was a story of yours that I was watching or if it was an interview or something, but you had talked about, like you said, like, I don't want to forget her. I'm not doing this to forget her. And I thought, like, I love that you were sharing that. I love, 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 love what you're doing. And I love that you want to teach gratitude. Like, I'm going to be a broken record 100 times over, but honestly, I commend you. I think it's incredible. I commend your bravery for sharing such a hard topic. And like, just you yourself are a beautiful light being. And the fact that, so many people could have taken that year wait period and gone on a destructive path or have, been incredibly angry or said things or done things. You composed yourself in such a beautiful way. And like, just, yeah, I'm in awe. I'm in complete awe of you.
No,
So,
I definitely have a new purpose. So thank you for allowing me to start that purpose and to share, because it's just something that I just don't think is talked about enough. And, like you said, I think women are we just do things because we have to. And there's no credit given of how hard that actually is. It's not easy. And yeah, I'm excited to share now. It has purpose, it has meaning. I want to help people. So it's definitely a new path, but I'm so excited.
and anyone that wants to, I will have in my show notes, I will have all the links to Diane and she'll provide me the links and stuff to her mala bracelets. They're absolutely beautiful, by the
I
way.
actually made one for Rachel. So they used a like baby pink and baby purple blanket and hat. So I actually have it on. I don't know if you'll be able to like see it, but it's like light purple beads and then rose quartz. So that's my Rachel bracelet. It's on my website too. So I have my bracelet for her that makes me smile. So
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Um, Honestly, I feel like I could talk to you for
I
hours.
know.
Like you are a gem. And like I mean that with my whole heart. I love how the universe connects people and brings us together. And I'm so happy that I saw you a couple weeks ago and I was like, you need to be on my podcast.
Yes.
Because a past version of me would have been like shy, quiet, and be like, okay, well, I think I know her, but that's okay.
No, I'm so happy you did, because this is exactly, you want, again, manifestation and abundance and all the things. I was like, no, I want to be on people's podcasts. I want to spread the word. I want to help as many women as I can through gratitude and through mindset, because it's single-handedly, I'll say it a million times more, it single-handedly saved my life. So I want people to know about this. I want people to practice it. Like, just trust the process. Like, it works. Like,
Mhm.
and it's not complicated. I think everybody overcomplicates everything,
Yeah.
and it's not complicated to start anyway. And yeah, I'm so ready, and I'm so thankful that you said something to me and that we are here, because it's it's just, yeah, it just needs to be talked about. It's just not, it's life. It happens all the time. Like,
Mhm.
when I went back to talk to Nurse Rachel, there was a girl walking out of the same room I did, bawling her eyes out because she lost her baby and she was very pregnant. So I'm just like, oh my God, like, it literally happens every day. So I just I want to save the world. I want to help as many women and men and families, and just to know it's okay. Like, it will be okay. I
Yeah.
promise. And, you know, grieve, cry, scream, do all the things, do them. I did them, do them, but just make some time for gratitude, because I promise it will change everything.
Yeah.
It'll change everything.
It's honestly, it's just, yeah. And I think the things that you shared in like with your journey, just like I wouldn't like I didn't even experience it, but I didn't even think of like you have to make funeral arrangements that, that your body still produced milk after your baby was gone, like all of those things. And the fact that, was there not a medication to instantly dry you up, or did they not give you tips or tricks on like things like even like cabbage leaves, anything to help dry you up faster? But I think this just also brings an awareness of things that like when you're completely numb, you don't even know what to think of can happen next. Or it's completely unimaginable. I wouldn't have even think. I know, yes, a baby has to come out at the end, but I thought like, oh my gosh, she had to give birth. Like just even my mind, and I'm not someone that
Yeah,
went through it. And I think the awareness of what you went through is so important for other people to
yeah,
hear as
yeah.
well, because like,
Even watching the belly go down.
mhm,
Like, I was very close to full term. Like I said, I was almost 30 weeks. Like, I was pregnant,
mhm,
and watching the belly go down and down, or even the first couple weeks, still looking pregnant and not wanting to go outside because I don't want someone to ask me when I'm due because I still look pregnant. And then I have to tell them, oh, my baby died. Like,
yeah,
there's all that. Like, again, like, we should talk again, because there's so many like avenues you can go down with things that you don't think of,
yeah,
or some people played it off. That was another thing that upset me. Some people played it off, and I'm like, no, I held my daughter. This wasn't like I don't even know how to explain it, because I don't want to disrespect anyone, because I've had a miscarriage too. But like, with my miscarriage, there was nothing. It was all just, you know what I mean? Like, the cells, I didn't see anything. Whatever. Right. But like, this was a baby. Like, she was
mhm,
a full blown baby with fingers and toes. And like, if I sent a picture, you wouldn't think she wasn't fine. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I think people need to realize, is that, like, no, like, none of you were there. Like, I held her. She was a full blown baby. She didn't look weird. She didn't look deformed. She didn't look like she wasn't ready. She looked like a preemie baby.
mhm,
And it's just like, I think that's something that the outside has to really understand,
mhm,
is that these are babies.
yeah,
These aren't cells. These aren't like, a DNC. And it's not to knock that. That's traumatizing. I have my cousin had a lot of trouble getting pregnant and had to terminate one because it was, what is it, ectopic?
Yeah.
So like, but now she just had a baby and a few months back now, and he's amazing. And it was like, I'm so over the moon for her. But those are traumatizing too. I'm not taking that away, but I think a lot of people weren't really thinking. I'm like, no, I held her. I held her in my arms. Like this was a full blown baby. And I
And
think that's something else that people have to understand when dealing with somebody that that has gone through this. These are real babies. These aren't miscarriages. These aren't, and again, not to knock that because that's traumatizing, but just to understand the level of what a stillbirth is. People don't think. They just think, oh, like, yeah, like a miscarriage. And it's like,
no.
no, I gave birth to a baby. I felt her come out. There was silence. I held her like, no, this is a baby, And I also I want to help people talk to people that have been
Hmm.
through this because
Yeah.
so many people are like, I don't know what to say to you. And I said, perfect. I don't either. So just be here. You don't
Hmm.
have to say anything. Just be here. We can just normally talk. What did you do today? I think
Yeah.
everyone thinks they have to say the right thing. And, just you'll know by the person you're talking to where they want to go.
Hmm.
You'll know if they don't want to talk about it. You'll know if they do want to talk about it. They'll give you signs of where they want the conversation to go and just be normal with them. Just
Hmm.
be normal, have compassion, bring them food. That was the biggest thing because I didn't want to cook. I didn't want to do anything. Bring them food, just be normal and, gauge the conversation by what they're giving you. Because a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but the person it's happening to, all they want to do is just talk about it and no one's engaging in that. So then you start to feel like no one cares because no one's asking, no one wants to talk about it, but they're just not talking about it because they don't want to upset you. So it's
Hmm.
just like a circle. Just gauge the conversation by what the person's giving you. If they mention the baby, talk about it because they want to talk about it. If
Yeah.
they keep changing the subject or they're talking about stuff where you're just like, why are they talking about that? Just go with it. Gauge where that person is, bring them food and just be normal, be the normal relationship that you have with them. That would be one thing I would say to people dealing with, somebody that has lost a child that way, because it's tough. You don't know what to say.
Hmm.
So I would just say, be yourself, just be that person.
I think that's amazing advice because honestly, people don't know what to say. And I honestly truly believe that a lot of people don't allow their mind to go to the unimaginable. So they chalk it up to something lesser than what it
Yes.
is. And because you know what, for someone that has given birth, I could not imagine actually going through. Was it oxytocin that you were hooked up to?
I don't know if it was oxytocin or is there another one? There's
I'm
two kinds.
I'm sure it doesn't matter. There's lots of different things, but
There's one
just
that's stronger than the other, I was told.
okay.
But that sounds familiar. It might be that.
But just being hooked up and like sitting there and then having an epidural, like it's the whole process of bringing something into the world, whether it's, your beautiful daughter was alive or she had passed, you still have to do all the actions. And I think so many people don't know how to deal with that or how to let their mind go there, and chalking it up to something lesser than what it is just a way that they can feel better about themselves because they don't want to feel that pain or resonate with that pain. So I think it's
That's a
incredible that,
negative thing.
yeah,
You
like
know,
it's
I
just,
I know people mean well when they do that, but you're not helping the other person because how that made I won't speak for everybody, but how that made me feel is that they didn't care. Certain people be like, oh, like when are you going to go back to work? Are you going to do this? And I'm like, what? Like, you just go away. Like, what? Or like, oh, well, you have Jake, so everything's good. And I'm like, you don't say things like that because, like, exactly like you said, there's stuff that all leads up to that. It's not just like, oh, hey, I had a stillbirth. I had to go through the mental and physical of birth. I had to go through the mental and physical of leaving with a box and not a baby. I had to go through the physical of walking out of labor and delivery and having everybody just kind of like side eyeing and staring because everybody knows what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things, not just the actual loss of the baby. There's so many other things that come with it, and I've had people be like, "Oh, you're so quiet." I'm like,
What do you
I
want me
just,
to say?
like, I have nothing, like, go away, go away. And it's stuff like that. Like, don't say that to people. Like, don't tell them they're quiet. Just go with what they're going. Like, I had my best friend who was with me at the Manifest event. She would come over and we would just sit in silence. You don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just her being there was comforting to me. And she would make me food and we would just sit. And then the next time she came, we were all laughs and we were telling jokes and we were just in that moment where I let myself laugh. And then the next time we sat in silence. Like, you don't have to say anything, but just don't ridicule them and don't point things out like, oh, you're quiet today. Well, yeah, I am quiet today and I'm allowed to be.
And honestly, like, grief is not linear by any means. It comes and goes, and you can even have moments, 10 years from now, 20
Yeah.
years, 30 years
And
from
I'm
now,
sure I will.
you know, and I think that's what other people need to understand about grief and a healing journey. And again, it's that duality of you can still hold this massive amount of grief and still find gratitude in your life. You can still do things, but never forget that this is part of your story. This is part of you. And yes, years down the road, like, she's not gone. She may not be here earthside. She is with you every day.
She sits
And
on my dresser. I see her
yeah,
every.
and that's, there's another woman that she was 10 weeks when she lost her baby, so she didn't have to do the whole process, but she named her, and every time she sees a rainbow, she's like, oh, she's with me today, and she openly talks about her. And I just, like, every time I see her post on social media, I send her, I'm like, I love that you are sharing that, because she is part of you. This is a part of your story. And I think people, the way we're conditioned or the way we're brought up, it's like, you need to compartmentalize that grief. Don't talk about it, so I don't have to feel it. I don't have to think about it. And I think it is something that is so incredibly powerful to talk about, and so incredibly powerful to say, you know what, this was part of my story. And even 30 years from now, if you have a moment where you break down and cry, that's okay. That is
Totally.
absolutely okay. That is, that's
Oh,
okay.
for sure. And like with me, every time I see daisies, so her birth flower is a daisy, and daisies come up in the strangest places where I'm like, no, that's her, because there's
Mhm.
no reason for a daisy to be there. Like, it's her. And when I'm trying to make a big decision on something, or when I'm just like feeling blah, like, I see daisies in the strangest places, and it's so cool. So, like, daisies is my thing, and that's why that Instagram is the Daisy Collective, because it's just a place that I want to start, sharing that, and just, for both sides, for people that have people that they know that have gone through this and how they can help instead of making it worse, not on purpose, but so many times people are like, well, this time next year I'm like, please, like, please stop.
Yeah.
And again, everybody means well, but I promise you that doesn't help. It just doesn't help. This
Mhm.
time next year, what? We're all cured and we don't think about it anymore? No. And everyone heals different times. So this time next year, that person may feel the exact same. It may take them a couple years to be themselves again, and that's okay. To
Mhm.
put that timeline, to be like, oh, this time next year you'll feel better. That's putting a timeline on somebody, and they might not work that fast. A
Yeah.
year is not a long time. Like, when we think of, like, we're almost in November, like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And to think like April 26th is when everything, or the 28th. Oh my God, I can't even think right now. But like, talking so much, it'll be 2 years. 2 years. Like, that's crazy to me that 2 years have gone by since that. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Like,
Mhm.
the details I remember are crazy. And it's just like, I can't even believe like 2 years have gone by, and it can still make me cry the same way it did on the first day. And that's why I say, like, don't put time frames on people and say, well, this time next year it'll be better. Like, don't do that,
Mhm.
because it might not be better for them. It depends how they work. It depends if they get help. It depends, like, there's so many things it depends on. And and that's, like I said, that's part of why I wanted to do this too, to help others of what not to say. Because
Yeah.
people mean well. No one says anything to hurt people, but some stuff unintentionally hurts people and doesn't make them feel good. So, like, I want to help with that aspect too, like how to help people grieving from something like this, and even me and my cousin, like, the bond we have now over this, and we've always been close, but like, that's been amazing because now we can talk to each other. Her whole pregnancy, I'm like, how are you? How are you? What are you feeling today? Because it's emotional,
Mhm.
having failed pregnancies after failed pregnancies and can't get pregnant. And they tried, not IVF, what's the other one?
IUI.
IUI, yeah, they tried that. It didn't work. And their son now was completely natural, all by themselves on their honeymoon, which is a fun story, and he's awesome, and I'm so happy for her. And I tried to help her the best way that I could, just, again, think positive, be grateful, picture him coming home, picture
Mhm.
him in the house, in the bedroom. They got his room ready, and he's awesome. And and I'm so thankful, but I knew what to say and what not to say. I
Yeah.
wish I didn't, but I did.
Yeah.
But I want to help people with that too. Like, I can help you help people that going through this, because there's just certain cliche things that I would just say avoid at all costs, because it doesn't help.
Mhm.
you know and yeah, I'm so excited. I feel like this is like the official, like, launch of of that new, like, this is the first time that, a stranger, quote unquote, a stranger has, been like, come do this, because, like, with Melissa, I've known her for a while, but still amazing. But I feel like this is like the first official, like, okay, we're doing this. Like, we're talking to people, we're sharing, we're gonna help people, like, let's do this. And like, with mindset stuff, I don't want it to be like just, stillbirth. I don't want to focus on that. It's definitely at my core, and I definitely will be talking about it and helping, but I just want to spread mindset in general. Like,
Mhm.
just, it can help so many aspects of your life. But I definitely, obviously, this is a huge part of who I am now. So I'm so happy to be able to share it and help anybody that will listen, because it's tough. I won't even pretend, it's a tough thing to go through. It's a mind game that that you don't want to play, and but we can find joy. We can do things that, I've had some of my best laughs this year, and I think it's because I have put my daughter in a spot in my life where it makes sense,
Yeah.
and that she's with me now. I feel protected all the time because I
Mhm.
have someone watching me. I'm doing things that scare me because I'm like, well, she's here, she's watching me, she's not going to let me fall on my face. Like, we got this. So it's just, it's a journey I'm so excited to share. So again, thank you so much for letting me do this, because yeah, it's the official launch. We've launched.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I
Totally.
think your story can help so many people. I think, like, I've got like a million thoughts going on in my head right
I'm
now.
telling you, we're gonna have to do a part two for
I
sure.
know. I know, but it's just the strength that you have. I think you can also teach other women to have the strength by using your mindset and diving into gratitude. Um, and I think maybe that's what we'll do as part two when we put you on the Stepping Into You podcast. We're going to talk about the strength that you kind of cultivated, because my gosh, like, for you to have an awareness and for you to flip the perspective of like, yes, this is beyond the unimaginable that has happened to me, but I now want to do this. I now want to, pivot my life path a little bit and, share and do what you're doing is like, it is beyond incredible. And I'm so proud of you and I'm so thankful. And it's just, people need to understand what mindset and gratitude can really do for you, that it can bring you out of like the deepest of darkest places, and that it's okay to talk about the unimaginable happening to you. It doesn't have to be taboo. It doesn't have to be quiet. It doesn't have to be shy. Because the fact is, when, like, again, without sounding like a broken record, when you said the doctor said like this happens daily, I thought, no, this can't happen daily.
Right?
And I think, we're both in two worlds where you feel so incredibly alone because you don't have that community that you can talk to, and no one wants to be part of that
No,
community.
me and my
And
cousin say it's a club we did not sign up for.
yeah, like, and that, honestly, that's what I say to my fertility clients is like, I know you did not ask to sign up to be, you did not ask for this library card to be part of here. But yeah, and absolutely the whole opposite end of it of, you
Yeah.
know, everything that you've gone through. I commend you for sharing. Yeah,
It feels good. Like selfishly, it helps me heal too. You know, the more I talk about it, the more, if someone says to me, "Oh, I listened and that helped me so much. Thank you." Like that's what I am doing this for, to help others. But there is a selfish part that also helps me heal more and more too. So it's just a big old like, community, and I want people to use it for everything, not just grieving, not
Mhm.
just like I said, we can do a part two or just talk more about that. But yeah, it's something that I swore, and it was something that happened so fast when I got home. I was like, okay. I was like, you know what? I was like, we are gonna do something with this. I said, I'm not just a statistic. I'm not just gonna sit here. And I had some mindset work, like Bob Proctor's stuff before. So I'm very thankful for that too.
Mhm.
Because that's kind of what got me going. And I was like, okay, let's think about this for a second, And I just, yeah, I feel like as easy as it is to go into a depression, it's
Mhm.
that easy to go the other way
Yeah.
if you make that choice, right? It's all about decisions. And I know some people will be like, no, no, you're wrong. And that's fine. But, I've been through a lot in my life that has nothing to do with this. And, losing a child and holding a child that's not breathing, that's enough to send you into a downward spiral. That's enough to not want to get out of bed. That's enough to drink and just not give a crap about anybody around you. And it would be warranted. Nobody would be mad at you for it. But
Yeah.
it's that easy to go the other way. It's that easy to take 2 seconds and be like, okay, it's hard for me today, but what am I thankful for? My pillow. Okay, cool. Like it's that easy to go the other way too. And obviously always get help if you need help. Like there's you're not alone,
Mhm.
anyone can reach out to me at any time. I want to help, and it's time in my journey to step out and to do that. And hopefully I'll have a pregnancy journey to share too. Because that would also be enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Diane, thank you, thank you,
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you.
I'm glad that we connected. I am honestly like, I have a little book besides my bed that says like what magic did I witness today? And I write down all synchronicities. And it's, you know what, I don't know how you came into my space, but I started following you, and then I was like, I saw you manifest. I'm like, I need you in my podcast. I really believe that there's synchronicities everywhere. So I
Yeah.
honestly
Like
journal them.
how crazy is that though? Like a
Mhm.
random event in Toronto
Yeah.
with not a lot of people. It wasn't like 1,000-person event. Like it was an intimate event in
Mhm.
Toronto, and I was behind you in a line.
Yep.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, it's honestly, it was just, yeah, I can't explain it. There's no way
Uh,
you can explain
that was
these
that was
things.
manifested for sure.
Absolutely. And I just, And I honestly encourage everyone, put a journal beside your bed and write down whatever title you want, an evidence journal, the magic you witnessed today. Start documenting the synchronicities you see in life, and you will start to connect dots on how, people or places or things come in. Like from your story, I believe Rachel was there for you for that reason, like your nurse Rachel, because
Yeah.
she made that experience so much better for you. And like I got very choked up when you told me that you named your daughter after the nurse. I was like, that is beyond amazing. That is like, um, but yes, before I would talk on for another like 3 hours.
Seriously.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your story so honestly and openly. And it is incredibly brave of you to share. And I'm proud of you and I'm thankful for you. And really, we need to stay connected, but like, have the most amazing, amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
If you found this helpful or know anyone that needs to hear this, please share. And don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. In love and gratitude, Jessica.